The lunch rush at Marcello's Italian bistro hit like a tidal wave every day at noon, and today was no exception. I moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates of pasta and risotto, forcing smiles that didn't quite reach my eyes, trying to ignore the persistent ache in my lower back that had become my constant companion over the past 6 months. 6 months pregnant and still on my feet for 8-hour shifts. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was serving expensive Italian food to people who could afford leisurely lunches while I could barely afford the rent on my studio apartment 3 subway stops away. "Excuse me, miss?" Table 7. An older couple, kind faces, generous tippers based on their appearance. "Could we get more bread?" "Of course, right away." I smiled, genuine this time, and headed toward the kitchen. The pain hit without warning. Sharp, stabbing, radiating from my abdomen through my entire body. I gasped, one hand flying to my stomach, the other gripping the edge of a nearby table for support. The tray I'd been carrying clattered to the floor, glasses shattering across the polished hardwood. The restaurant went silent. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice shaking. "I'm so sorry, I just need a moment." "What the hell is this?" Marco Vitelli's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. Our manager stormed across the dining room, his face flushed with rage, designer suit immaculate, hair slicked back with too much product. Everything about him screamed insecurity masked as authority. "I'm sorry, Marco. I'll clean it up right now." "You'll clean it up? Do you have any idea how much those glasses cost? Do you know what kind of impression this makes?" He was standing over me now, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the garlic from the kitchen. "This is the 3rd time this week you've caused a scene. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from, I love hearing from you." "I wasn't feeling well," I tried to explain. "I don't care about your excuses. You're pregnant. That's your problem, not mine. You should have thought about that before taking a job that requires you to actually work." Heat flooded my face, humiliation and anger warring in my chest. Around us, I could feel the other diners watching, some with sympathy, others with the detached curiosity of people witnessing a car crash. "Marco, please. I need this job. I'll be more careful. More careful." His voice rose, echoing off the exposed brick walls. "You're a liability, Alessia. You're slow, you're clumsy, and frankly, you're making the customers uncomfortable. Look at yourself." I was looking at myself. Reflected in the mirror behind the bar, I could see what he saw, a 28-year-old woman in a black server's uniform that strained across her pregnant belly, dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights, hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started the day neat but now looked disheveled. I looked exactly like what I was, desperate and alone. "I'm doing my best," I said quietly, bending to start picking up the broken glass. "Your best isn't good enough." Marco grabbed my arm, yanking me upright. "Stand up when I'm talking to you. Do you think?" The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. His palm connected with my cheek with a crack that seemed to echo through the entire restaurant. My head snapped to the side, stars exploding across my vision. I stumbled backward, one hand flying to my face, the other instinctively protecting my stomach. Time seemed to slow down. I could hear someone gasp. Could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on me. Could taste blood where I'd bitten my tongue. Marco stood there, his hand still raised, his face twisted with rage that seemed disproportionate to the crime of dropping some glasses. Later, I would understand what I couldn't know in that moment, that Marco Vitelli was drowning in gambling debts, that he'd been skimming from the restaurant's accounts, that his precarious position made him vicious with anyone he perceived as beneath him. But in that moment, all I knew was pain and humiliation and the terrible certainty that I was about to lose my job, my income, the last thread keeping me and my unborn baby from complete disaster. "That's my wife." The voice came from behind me. Deep, quiet, and carrying an authority that made Marco's bluster seem like a child's tantrum. It was the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command attention, that communicated power through tone alone. I turned, my hand still pressed to my burning cheek, and found myself looking at a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against an immaculately tailored charcoal suit. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes so dark they were almost black. Everything about him radiated controlled power, from his stance to the way other people in the restaurant were suddenly very interested in their meals. But what struck me most was his expression. He was looking at Marco with the kind of cold fury that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. Excuse me. Marco's voice had lost some of its confidence. I don't know who you think you are, but this is my restaurant, Anne. Your restaurant. The man moved forward with the fluid grace of a predator. He was flanked by two other men in dark suits, both built like linebackers, both watching Marco with the kind of attention that suggested they were waiting for a signal. I was under the impression that Antonio Marcello owned this establishment. When did that change? Marco's face went pale. Mr. Marcello owns it, yes, but I'm the manager and I have authority to assault pregnant women. The man's voice never rose above conversational level, but somehow that made it more terrifying. To publicly humiliate employees. To put your hands on my wife. He was beside me now, one hand settling on my lower back with surprising gentleness. I should have pulled away, should have corrected him, should have done something other than stand there in shock. But the warmth of his palm through my uniform was oddly steadying, and something in his presence made me feel safer than I had in months. I didn't know she was married, Marco stammered. She never mentioned. So you make a habit of slapping women who aren't married? That makes it better. The man's jaw tightened. What's your name? Marco Vitelli, sir. I'm the general manager, and I was just disciplining an employee who... Marco Vitelli. The man repeated the name like he was filing it away for later use. And you work for Antonio Marcello? It wasn't a question. Marco nodded anyway, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead despite the restaurant's air conditioning. Does Antonio know you've been skimming from the accounts? The man asked it casually, like he was inquiring about the weather. Roughly 50,000 over the past 8 months, if my information is correct. The color drained completely from Marco's face. Around us, I could hear the whisper of movement as other diners suddenly became very interested in leaving. The staff had disappeared into the kitchen, leaving just us in the main dining room. I don't know what you're talking about, Marco said, but his voice shook. That's a serious accusation. I don't make accusations I can't prove. The man pulled out his phone, showed Marco something on the screen. I couldn't see what it was, but whatever Marco saw made him stumble backward like he'd been struck. Bank records, ledger discrepancies, security footage of you accessing the safe after hours. Shall I continue? Who are you? Marco whispered. My name is Dante Romano. He said it simply, like it should mean something. And based on the way Marco's face went from pale to gray, it did. And this restaurant, along with 12 others in this city, operates under my family's protection. Which means Antonio Marcello is a friend. Which means his employees are under my protection. Which means you just made a very serious mistake. I stood there, trying to process what was happening. Dante Romano. The name rang a bell, something I'd heard mentioned in whispers, in news articles that danced around what he actually did for a living. Crime family, organized operations, the kind of man who operated in the spaces between legal and illegal. And he'd just claimed I was his wife. Mr. Romano, I apologize, Marco started. You don't apologize to me. Dante's voice cut him off. You apologize to her. Marco's eyes darted to me, then away, like he couldn't bear to look at what he'd done. I'm sorry, Alessia. I was out of line. The stress of the job. Save your excuses. Dante's hand was still on my back, steady and warm. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. If Antonio wants to press charges for embezzlement, he'll be in touch. If not, consider yourself fortunate and disappear. One of Dante's men moved forward, and Marco practically ran toward the back of the restaurant, toward his office and whatever belongings he could grab before being thrown out. The silence that followed was deafening. Dante turned to face me, and up close, I could see details I'd missed before. Fine lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his current expression indicated. A small scar on his left cheekbone. The subtle pattern woven into his charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Are you all right? He asked quietly. His hand moved from my back to gently tilt my chin, examining where Marco had struck me. His touch was careful, controlled, nothing like the violence I just experienced. Do you need medical attention? I'm fine, I managed, though my voice shook. Who are you? Why did you? Dante Romano. He released my chin but didn't step back. And I said you were my wife because it was the fastest way to make him back down. Men like Marco Vitelli only understand power and consequences. Being associated with me provides both. You can't just claim someone is your wife. I can when they're being assaulted in front of me. His expression softened slightly. Though if you prefer, I can retract the statement and simply say you're under my protection as an employee of an establishment I have interest in. The effect is the same, just less personal. I should have been angry. Should have been indignant at this stranger inserting himself into my life, making claims about me without permission. But my cheek was throbbing, my back was aching, and I was so tired of being afraid all the time. Why? I asked. Why help me? You don't know me. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Let's just say I have a policy about men who put their hands on women. And pregnant women especially. He glanced down at my stomach, then back to my face. How far along are you? 6 months. The answer came automatically before I could think better of sharing personal information with a stranger. And before you ask, no, I'm not married. No, the father isn't in the picture. Yes, I need this job desperately because I have rent due in a week and medical bills piling up and absolutely no backup plan. The words tumbled out, months of stress and fear finally finding a release. I pressed my hand to my mouth, horrified at myself. I'm sorry. I don't know why I just told you all of that. Because you're exhausted, Dante said simply. And because sometimes it's easier to tell the truth to a stranger than to people who know you. He gestured to one of the nearby tables. Sit. Please. You're shaking. I was shaking. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me weak and trembling. I sank into the chair he indicated, grateful for the support. Dante sat across from me, his movements controlled and deliberate. One of his men disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a glass of water and a clean cloth filled with ice. For your cheek, Dante said, taking the cloth and holding it out to me. I accepted it, pressing the ice to my face and wincing at the contact. Thank you. For this, for what you did with Marco. Though I'm pretty sure I just lost my job anyway since he fired me right before you fired him. You didn't lose your job. He had no authority to fire you, he was already committing fraud. His termination is invalid. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm texting Antonio now. You'll keep your position, and I'll make sure he knows what happened. Why are you doing this? I asked again. There has to be a reason. People don't just help strangers out of the goodness of their hearts, especially not people like you. People like me. His lips quirked in what might have been amusement. What kind of person do you think I am? The kind who has men in suits following him around. The kind whose name makes managers commit fraud turn white. The kind who knows things about bank records and security footage that regular people wouldn't have access to. I lowered the ice pack, meeting his gaze directly. I'm not stupid, Mr. Romano. I know who you are. What you are. And yet you're still sitting here talking to me instead of running away. I'm 6 months pregnant and just got slapped by my boss. Running isn't really an option right now. I paused. And honestly, you're less frightening than the idea of being homeless with a baby on the way. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes that suggested approval. Fair enough. To answer your question, I'm doing this because I was sitting at that table over there. He gestured to a corner booth I hadn't noticed, having lunch with my associate when I watched your manager humiliate and then assault you. I don't tolerate that kind of behavior, especially in establishments under my protection. So this is about business. About protecting your interests. Partially. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away. But I also watched you work for the past 45 minutes before the incident. You were efficient, professional, kind to every customer even when they were rude to you. You're clearly in pain and exhausted, but you kept going. That speaks to character. Character doesn't pay rent. No, but it means you're worth helping. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. Antonio is on his way. He'll want to apologize in person and discuss your continued employment. In the meantime, I have a proposition for you. My guard went up immediately. What kind of proposition? The kind where you get a job that doesn't require you to be on your feet for 8 hours a day while 6 months pregnant, Dante said calmly. I own several businesses in this city. One of them is a consulting firm that needs an office manager. The position involves scheduling, correspondence, light bookkeeping. You'd work normal business hours, have health insurance, and make roughly double what you're making here. It sounded too good to be true. Which meant it probably was. In exchange for what? I asked carefully. In exchange for showing up and doing the work. He tilted his head slightly. You think there's a catch? There's always a catch. Fair enough. The catch, if you want to call it that, is that by working for me, you become associated with me. With my family and our businesses. Some people will treat you differently because of that. Some will defer to you out of respect or fear. Others might try to use you to get to me. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was describing the weather. But you'll be protected. Safe. And you'll have the resources to prepare for your baby. I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to say yes so badly it physically hurt. But I'd learned the hard way that nothing in life was free, that every gift came with strings attached. I need to think about it, I said finally. Of course. Dante stood, pulling a business card from his inside jacket pocket and setting it on the table between us. My direct number. Call me when you've decided. Or if you need anything in the meantime. Why would I need anything from you? His expression grew serious. Because Marco Vitelli just lost everything, his job, his reputation, possibly his freedom if Antonio presses charges. Men in that position sometimes do desperate things. And you're the person he'll blame for his downfall, fairly or not. The ice I'd been pressing to my cheeks suddenly felt colder. You think he'll come after me? I think it's a possibility you should be prepared for. Which is why, he gestured to one of his men, Luca is going to follow you home today. Discreetly. Just to make sure you get there safely. I don't need a bodyguard. Consider it a precaution. One day, just to be safe. After that, it's your choice whether to accept my job offer and the protection that comes with it. Dante moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at me. And Alessia. I meant what I said. You're under my protection now, whether you accept the job or not. That's not a choice I'm giving you. It's simply a fact. Then he was gone, his men following, leaving me alone in the restaurant with a glass of water, a melting ice pack, and a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The apartment I'd called home for the past year was a study in managed poverty. Studio space in a building where the heat worked sporadically and the neighbors' arguments bled through walls thin as paper. But it was mine, or at least it would be until rent came due again, and it was clean and safe enough. I'd been aware of Luca following me the entire subway ride home, though he'd kept his distance like Dante had promised. Discreet protection. It should have felt invasive, threatening. Instead, I felt safer than I had in months. Inside my apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to process everything that had happened. My cheeks still throbbed where Marco had struck me. My back ached from the pregnancy and the stress. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. Who was Dante Romano, really? Why had he helped me? And why did the memory of his hand on my back, steady and warm, make me feel things I had no business feeling about a stranger? I moved to the small bathroom, studying my reflection in the mirror. A red mark bloomed across my left cheek, not quite a bruise yet but heading that direction. Tomorrow it would be worse. Tomorrow everyone would see what had happened, would know I'd been hit. The shame of it burned almost as much as the actual slap. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Alessia. A woman's voice, warm and professional. My name is Sofia Marcello. I'm Antonio's daughter and the actual manager of the bistro now that Marco has been terminated. My father asked me to call and assure you that your position is secure and that we're deeply sorry for what happened today. I sank onto my bed, which was really just a mattress on the floor. Thank you. That's very kind. It's the bare minimum, actually. What Marco did was unacceptable, and we should have been paying closer attention to how he was treating staff. Sophia paused. I also wanted you to know that we're implementing new policies. Staff meetings to discuss workplace respect, a confidential reporting system, and substantially better benefits including paid maternity leave. That's wonderful. I meant it. Even if I didn't stay, even if I took Dante's offer, these changes would help the other servers, the kitchen staff, everyone who worked there. There's one more thing, Sophia said. Dante Romano called my father personally to advocate for you. He doesn't do that often, getting involved in operational matters at the establishments he protects. Whatever impression you made on him, it was significant. After we hung up, I pulled out Dante's business card, running my thumb over the raised lettering. Romano Consulting Group. A legitimate business front for whatever else he did, probably. But also a real job with real benefits and the promise of safety. I thought about my baby, currently doing gymnastics against my ribs. Thought about the medical bills I couldn't pay and the nursery I couldn't afford to furnish. Thought about what it would mean to be associated with a man like Dante Romano. And then I thought about the alternative, staying where I was, struggling alone, hoping nothing else went wrong before the baby came. There was no real choice. There never had been. I dialed the number on the card. He answered on the second ring. Alessia. I'll take the job, I said before I could second-guess myself. Whatever it is, whatever the catch is, I'll take it. I need the money and the insurance, and I don't have the luxury of being proud right now. There is no catch, Dante said quietly. Just an offer of employment and protection. Can you start Monday? Yes. Good. I'll have Sophia send over the paperwork and benefits information. And Alessia. He paused. You're making the right choice. I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. After we hung up, I lay on my bed and placed both hands on my stomach, feeling my baby move beneath my palms. Just you and me, I whispered. Like it's always been. But maybe now we'll actually be okay. I had no idea that within 48 hours, everything would change again. That Dante Romano wasn't just offering me a job, he was offering me a door into a world I couldn't begin to understand. A world where the line between protection and possession was thinner than I'd ever imagined. And I had no idea that the man who'd claimed I was his wife in a moment of crisis would soon make that fiction into a reality that would bind us together in ways neither of us could escape. The Romano Consulting Group occupied the top 3 floors of a glass and steel tower in the financial district, the kind of building where doormen wore tailored uniforms and the lobby featured original artwork that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. I stood on the sidewalk Monday morning at 8:45, staring up at the building and wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Miss Castellano. A woman's voice pulled my attention. She was in her early 30s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun. I'm Elena Ricci, Mr. Romano's executive assistant. He asked me to meet you and show you around. Thank you. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder, suddenly self-conscious about my thrift store maternity dress and worn flats. I'm sorry, I probably should have asked about dress code. You look perfect, Elena interrupted warmly. And don't worry, Mr. Romano made it clear that comfort is the priority given your condition. Business casual is fine, and we have a break room with a couch if you need to rest during the day. She led me inside, through security that involved both metal detectors and what looked like facial recognition software, and into an elevator that required a keycard to access the upper floors. As we rose, Elena provided a running commentary. 22nd floor is general administrative offices, that's where you'll be working. 23rd is executive offices and conference rooms. 24th is Mr. Romano's personal office and private areas. You'll have access to all 3 floors, which is unusual. Most employees only have clearance for their own level. Why do I have access to everything? I asked carefully. Elena's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Mr. Romano was very specific about your security clearance. He wants you to feel comfortable moving through the space. The 22nd floor was a maze of glass-walled offices and modern workstations, populated by people who looked up briefly as we passed, then quickly returned to their work. Some looked curious. Others looked wary. None looked particularly welcoming. Here's your office, Elena said, opening a door to a corner space with windows overlooking the city. The desk was large and uncluttered, the chair looked ergonomic and expensive, and there was indeed a small couch against one wall. You'll be managing schedules for our consulting team, handling correspondence, coordinating meetings. Nothing too strenuous. This is too much, I said, looking around the space. I'm just an office manager. You're Mr. Romano's office manager, Elena corrected. That comes with certain considerations. Now, let me show you the computer system. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of passwords and procedures, filing systems and contact lists. Elena was patient and thorough, answering my questions without making me feel stupid for asking. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone who passed by my office was watching me, assessing me, trying to figure out who I was and why I was here. At 11, there was a knock on my door frame. I looked up to find Dante Romano standing there in another perfectly tailored suit, navy today, with a burgundy tie, looking every bit as intimidating as he had at the restaurant. How's your first morning going? He asked. Good. Elena's been very helpful. I stood, then immediately felt awkward about it and sat back down. Thank you again for this opportunity. May I come in? I nodded, and he entered, closing the door behind him. The office suddenly felt much smaller. How's your cheek? He moved closer, his gaze focused on where Marco had struck me. The bruise had darkened overnight, a purple-yellow mess that no amount of concealer could fully hide. It looks worse than it feels, I lied. You're a terrible liar. But his tone was gentle. I wanted to check on you personally and make sure you have everything you need. I'm fine. Really? This job it's more than I expected. More than I deserve, probably. You deserve a safe work environment and fair compensation. That's not a high bar. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small phone, newer model, still in its box. This is for you. It has my direct number programmed, as well as Elena's and building security. If anything happens, anything at all that makes you uncomfortable, you call immediately. I stared at the phone. That's really not necessary. Marco Vitelli hasn't been seen since Friday, Dante said quietly. He didn't go to his apartment, didn't contact friends or family. He's disappeared, which means he's either running or planning something. Until we know which, I want you to have a direct line to help. The ice that had formed in my stomach Friday afternoon returned. You think he's dangerous? I think he's desperate and humiliated, which can be the same thing. Dante set the phone on my desk. This isn't a request, Alessia. It's a condition of your employment. You carry this phone, you keep it charged, and if anything feels wrong, you use it. I picked up the phone, feeling the weight of it in my palm. Okay. Good. He moved toward the door, then paused. Also, I'm having lunch brought up for you. Elena mentioned you didn't pack anything, and the cafeteria food here is terrible. You don't have to. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. I know I don't have to. I want to. His expression softened slightly. Humor me. I have 3 sisters, and they all lectured me extensively about pregnancy nutrition when I mentioned I'd hired someone who was expecting. Despite everything, I felt myself smile. You told your sisters about me. They have a sixth sense about these things. They knew I'd done something before I even got home Friday. He opened the door. Eat lunch, rest when you need to, and call if anything concerns you. Elena knows to check on you periodically, but she'll be discreet about it. After he left, I sat staring at the phone for a long moment before tucking it into my purse. This was my life now. A man I barely knew providing phones and lunches and protection from threats I'd never asked to face. The lunch that arrived at noon was from an upscale Italian place, not Marcello's, and included enough food for 3 people. Homemade minestrone, fresh bread, a caprese salad, and tiramisu for dessert. I ate at my desk, working through emails and trying not to think about how much this meal probably cost. By 2 o'clock, exhaustion was creeping in. The baby had been particularly active all morning, and my back was throbbing despite the ergonomic chair. I was debating whether to actually use the couch when Elena appeared in my doorway. Afternoon slump, she asked knowingly. Is it that obvious? You're 6 months pregnant and it's your first day in a new job. I'd be more concerned if you weren't tired. She gestured to the couch. 20-minute power nap. I'll hold your calls and wake you if anything urgent comes up. I can't just sleep at work. Mr. Romano specifically told me to make sure you rest as needed. Doctor's orders, he said, though I suspect he was making that up. Elena smiled. But the sentiment stands. Take care of yourself, Alessia. That baby needs you healthy. I gave in, stretching out on the couch with a throw blanket that had mysteriously appeared at some point during the morning. As I drifted off, I heard Elena's voice from the doorway, soft and approving. She'll be good for him, she said to someone I couldn't see. He needs someone real, someone who doesn't want anything from him. I wanted to stay awake, to hear the response, to understand what she meant. But exhaustion pulled me under, and I slept dreamlessly for exactly 20 minutes before Elena gently woke me. The rest of the day passed smoothly. I managed schedules and correspondence, learned names and faces, and tried to ignore the curious looks from other employees. By 5 o'clock, I was ready to go home, my body aching and my mind overwhelmed with new information. I was gathering my things when Dante appeared in my doorway again. How was day 1? He asked. Exhausting but good. Everyone's been very helpful. I'm glad to hear it. I'll walk you out. You don't have to do that. Alessia. He said my name like he was dealing with a particularly stubborn child. I'm walking you out. It's not negotiable. We rode the elevator down in silence, the space feeling intimate despite the mirrors and lights. In the lobby, instead of leading me toward the subway entrance, Dante guided me to where a black town car waited at the curb. I don't need a car. The subway is packed at this hour, and you're exhausted. Luca will drive you home. He opened the door, and I saw the same man from Friday behind the wheel. This will be your regular arrangement. Morning and evening, door to door. That's too much. I can't accept. It's already arranged. Consider it part of your benefits package. He waited for me to get in, then closed the door before I could protest further. Through the tinted window, I watched him return to the building, flanked by 2 security guards, moving with the kind of confidence that came from knowing he was untouchable. What had I gotten myself into? The week passed in a strange new rhythm. Luca picked me up every morning at 7:30, drove me to the office where I worked until 5, then drove me home again. Dante checked on me daily, sometimes multiple times, always with the excuse of needing something work-related, but really, I suspected, to make sure I was okay. Elena became my lifeline, teaching me the unspoken rules of working for Dante Romano. Don't ask questions about his meetings with certain individuals. Don't mention specific names outside the office. Be polite but distant with anyone who seemed too interested in my connection to him. You're doing well, she said Thursday afternoon, reviewing some correspondence I'd drafted. Better than the last 3 people who had this position. What happened to them? I asked. They couldn't handle the pressure. The scrutiny, the implied danger, the reality of working for someone like Mr. Romano. Elena met my gaze directly. This isn't a normal office job, Alessia. You understand that, right? I'm starting to. Good. Because he's protecting you, which means you've become important to him. And when people become important to Dante Romano, they also become targets. The words should have frightened me more than they did. But I was too tired to be properly scared, too focused on making it through each day to worry about hypothetical threats. That night, I was in my apartment making dinner, pasta with Jared sauce, the only thing I could afford and had energy to prepare, when my new phone rang. Dante's name appeared on the screen. Hello. Are you home? His voice was tense in a way I hadn't heard before. Yes, just making dinner. Why? Lock your door. Now. And don't open it for anyone except Luca. He's on his way up. Fear spiked through me. What's happening? We found Marco Vitelli. He was spotted in your neighborhood an hour ago. Dante's words came fast, urgent. He's been watching you, Alessia. We have photos of him outside your building, following you to and from the subway before we started driving you. He's been planning something. My hand trembled as I moved to check the lock on my door. It was already engaged, but I added the chain for good measure. What does he want? Nothing good. Listen to me carefully. Luca is bringing you back to my place tonight. Just for safety until we locate Marco and deal with this situation. Your place. I can't just. You can and you will. This isn't a debate, Alessia. Your safety and your baby's safety are non-negotiable. There was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Luca, his expression grim. It's Luca, I told Dante. Let him in. Pack a bag for a few days. He'll wait. I opened the door, and Luca entered, immediately doing a sweep of my small apartment like he expected to find someone hiding in the bathroom or closet. Clear, he said into his radio. Then, to me, I'm sorry about this, Ms. Castellano. But Mr. Romano is right. This Marco guy has been stalking you for days. We only just confirmed it was him on the security footage. My legs felt weak. I sank onto my bed, one hand pressed to my stomach where the baby was doing flips. He's been watching me. 3 separate sightings near your building, twice more near the office before Mr. Romano implemented the car service. Luca's expression was sympathetic. He's obsessed with you, blames you for losing everything. Mr. Romano wants you somewhere secure until we handle it. I packed mechanically, clothes, toiletries, the prenatal vitamins I took every morning, the worn copy of a pregnancy book I'd been reading. My entire life fit in one duffel bag, which seemed both sad and fitting. Ready? Luca asked when I emerged from the bathroom. As I'll ever be. The drive to Dante's place took 20 minutes, winding through increasingly upscale neighborhoods until we reached a residential tower that screamed wealth and exclusivity. Luca pulled into an underground garage, parking in a spot marked, reserved, Di Romano. This way. He led me to a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint to operate. As we rose, my stomach churned with anxiety that had nothing to do with the pregnancy. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment that was somehow both intimidating and inviting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights. The furniture was modern but comfortable-looking, all clean lines and neutral colors. Artwork that I suspected was original hung on walls painted a soft gray. Dante appeared from what looked like a study, still in his work clothes but with his jacket off and his tie loosened. He looked tired, I realized. And worried. "Thank you, Luca," he said. "That'll be all for tonight." After Luca left, Dante turned his attention to me. "I know this isn't ideal." "Why?" I interrupted. "Why go to all this trouble for me? I'm just an office manager. Someone you barely know. Why put me up in your home, why provide security, why any of this?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. "Do you want the professional answer or the honest one?" "Both." "Professional answer, you work for me, which makes you my responsibility. Anything that happens to you reflects on me and my ability to protect my people. It's about reputation and honor." "And the honest answer?" He moved closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, subtle, expensive, distinctly masculine. "The honest answer is that when I saw Marco hit you, something in me snapped. I've seen violence my whole life, grown up around it, participated in it when necessary. But watching him strike a pregnant woman who was just trying to do her job." He shook his head. "I couldn't walk away from that. Couldn't leave you vulnerable. So I helped, and then I kept helping, and somewhere along the way you stopped being just someone I assisted and became someone I needed to protect. That doesn't make sense. You don't even know me. I know you're kind to people who don't deserve it. I know you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. I know you're terrified but you show up anyway because you don't have a choice." His gaze dropped to my stomach. "And I know that baby deserves to come into the world safe and loved, with a mother who isn't constantly looking over her shoulder." Tears burned in my eyes before I could stop them. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just let me keep you safe." He gestured down a hallway. "Guest suite is this way. Private bathroom, comfortable bed. Everything you should need." The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment. The bed was massive, covered in soft linens that probably had thread counts I couldn't imagine. The bathroom had both a soaking tub and a separate shower, all gleaming marble and polished fixtures. "This is too much," I said for what felt like the 100th time since meeting Dante Romano. "It's what you deserve." He set my duffel bag on a bench at the foot of the bed. "Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning about next steps." But before he could leave, I caught his arm. "Dante, what are you going to do about Marco?" His expression hardened. "What needs to be done? Don't hurt him because of me. Please. I don't want that on my conscience." "Marco Vitelli chose his path when he put his hands on you," Dante said quietly. "Whatever consequences he faces are his own doing. But I promise you, Alessia, he will never threaten you again. That's not a choice, it's a certainty." After he left, I sank onto the bed and finally let myself cry. Not from fear, though I was frightened. Not from stress, though that was overwhelming. But from the sheer relief of not being alone anymore. For the first time in 6 months, since the father of my baby had disappeared the moment I told him I was pregnant, since my parents had told me I'd made my bed and had to lie in it, since I'd been navigating this terrifying journey completely on my own, someone was taking care of me. And the fact that the someone was a dangerous man I barely knew should have terrified me more than it did. I woke at 3 a.m. to the baby doing gymnastics against my ribs and an unfamiliar ceiling above my head. For a moment, panic seized me. Where was I? Before memory returned. Dante's penthouse. Protection from Marco. Safety, at least for tonight. I needed water. My throat was dry, and the baby's acrobatics weren't helping. I pulled on the robe I'd found hanging in the bathroom, silk, expensive, way too nice for me, and made my way through the dark apartment toward where I remembered seeing the kitchen. A light was on. As I got closer, I heard voices. Dante's, low and controlled, and another male voice I didn't recognize. "Can't just disappear him," the stranger was saying. "His family will ask questions, and the police." "The police won't be a problem," Dante interrupted. "And his family can ask all the questions they want. They won't get answers. This is because of the girl." This is because he assaulted an employee of a protected establishment and then stalked her with intent to do harm. The girl, as you call her, is irrelevant to the business decision. Is she? Because from where I'm standing, you've moved her into your home, given her unprecedented access, and now you're willing to cross lines you normally wouldn't over some restaurant manager. Choose your next words carefully, Matteo. Dante's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. Alessia is under my protection. That makes her family business. And we protect family. There was a long silence. Then Matteo spoke again, his tone more measured. Is that what she is? Family. She will be. My breath caught. What did that mean? You're making this complicated, Matteo said. I'm making this simple. Marco Vitelli is a threat. We eliminate threats. That's what we do, what we've always done. The fact that I care about the person he's threatening doesn't change the fundamental business logic. But it changes you. And that makes people nervous, Dante. The family is already talking. Let them talk. I'm not my father. I don't make decisions by committee or worry about ruffling feathers. Alessia stays under my protection, Marco gets dealt with, and anyone who has a problem with either can bring it to me directly. I should have retreated. Should have gone back to the guest room and pretended I hadn't heard any of this. But I was frozen, processing the implications of what Dante had said. She will be family. What did that mean for me? For my baby. A floorboard creaked under my foot, old building, expensive but not perfect, and both men's heads snapped toward where I stood in the doorway. Matteo was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with the same dark hair and sharp features as Dante. A relative, clearly. And based on the way he was looking at me, assessing, calculating, someone important in the organization. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just needed water. It's fine. Dante was on his feet immediately, moving to the kitchen and filling a glass from the filtered water dispenser. You should be sleeping. So should you, probably. I accepted the water, very aware of Matteo's scrutiny. Thank you. Alessia, this is my cousin Matteo. He handles security operations. Matteo, this is Alessia Castellano. The girl who started all this trouble, Matteo said, but his tone wasn't unkind. Just matter of fact. I didn't mean to cause problems. You didn't cause anything, Dante interrupted firmly. Marco Vitelli caused his own problems. You're just the catalyst that brought them to light. Matteo stood, buttoning his jacket. I'll handle the Vitelli situation as discussed. But Dante, we need to have a longer conversation about where this is going. Later. After Matteo left, Dante and I stood in the kitchen, the only sound the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant noise of the city through the windows. How much did you hear? He asked finally. Enough to be confused. What did you mean about me being family? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then he said, come sit. We should talk. We moved to the living room, and I curled into one corner of the massive sectional sofa while Dante sat on the opposite end, keeping distance between us. When I said you were my wife at the restaurant, he began, it was a tactical decision. The fastest way to make Marco back down and establish your protection. But the more I thought about it over the weekend, the more I realized it was also the smartest long-term solution. I don't understand. In my world, Alessia, protection comes with structure. Women who are connected to the family, wives, daughters, sisters, have a level of security that employees or associates don't. It's about honor and tradition. You violate someone's wife or daughter, you're declaring war on the entire family. You want me to pretend to be your wife. I want it to become real. The words hung in the air between us. I must have misheard. Must have misunderstood. You're suggesting we actually get married, I said slowly. You and me. Two people who met less than a week ago. I'm suggesting a practical arrangement that benefits both of us, Dante corrected. You get security, resources, protection for you and your baby. I get. He paused. A legitimate reason to keep you close, to extend family protection, to shut down any questions about why I'm so invested in your safety. That's insane. That's practical. In my world, arranged marriages happen all the time. This would just be one based on mutual benefit rather than family alliances. I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. You want to marry me to protect me. I want to marry you to ensure no one ever hurts you again, he corrected. There's a difference. What about love? Affection. All the normal reasons people get married. Love is a luxury. Safety is a necessity. But something in his expression softened. Though I won't pretend I don't find you interesting, Alessia. The way you handled Marco, the way you've adapted to working for me, the way you're sitting here now questioning this instead of just accepting it, you're stronger than you know. That's attractive. You're attracted to me. It came out flat, disbelieving. I'm attracted to your strength. Your resilience. The fact that you're carrying a child alone and still showing up, still fighting. He leaned forward. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to let me protect you in the most permanent way possible. The baby kicked hard against my ribs, as if weighing in on the conversation. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood. But Alessia, understand this, whether you marry me or not, my protection stands. You and that baby are safe under my roof, with my name or without it. The marriage would just make it cleaner. After he left, I sat in the dark living room, my hands on my stomach, trying to understand how my life had become so complicated so quickly. A week ago, I'd been a struggling waitress with no prospects and no hope. Now I was living in a penthouse, working for a man who just proposed a marriage of convenience, and being stalked by someone who blamed me for his downfall. What do you think? I whispered to my baby. Should mommy marry the mob boss to keep us safe? The baby kicked twice, yes, and despite everything, I found myself smiling. This was insane. Absolutely, completely insane. But I'd done crazier things with less reason. And as I sat there in Dante Romano's penthouse, surrounded by luxury I'd never imagined, protected by a man I barely knew but somehow trusted, I realized something important. For the first time in 6 months, I wasn't alone. That had to count for something. I gave Dante my answer 3 days later, standing in his study while morning light filtered through the windows and the city sprawled beneath us like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Okay, I said simply. I'll marry you. He looked up from the papers he'd been reviewing, and for just a moment, I saw something vulnerable flash across his face before his usual control reasserted itself. You're certain? I'm terrified. But I'm also practical. I moved closer to his desk, one hand resting on my stomach where the baby had been kicking all morning. You're right that this is the cleanest solution. And honestly, I don't have better options. My baby deserves security, stability, protection. If marrying you provides that, then I can live with the arrangement. This isn't a prison sentence, Alessia. I'm not asking you to sacrifice your freedom. Aren't you? I interrupted gently. Let's be honest about what this is. You're a powerful man offering protection to someone vulnerable. That creates an inherent imbalance. You hold all the cards. Then we'll rewrite the rules. Dante stood, moving around the desk until he was close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I'll have my lawyers draw up a contract. Financial security for you regardless of how long the marriage lasts. Full medical coverage for you and the baby. Trust fund set up in the child's name. And most importantly, his expression grew serious, an exit clause. If at any point you decide this isn't working, you walk away with everything I've promised and no strings attached. Why would you do that? Give me that much power. Because a marriage, even one of convenience, requires trust. And you can't trust me if you feel trapped. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and when I didn't, his hand settled on my cheek, thumb tracing the spot where Marco's bruise had finally faded. I want you to choose to stay, Alessia. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Something shifted in my chest, a feeling I couldn't quite name. When? Soon. Within the week if possible. The sooner you carry my name, the sooner you're untouchable. He paused. Marco hasn't been located yet. He's gone to ground, which makes him more dangerous. Until he's dealt with, I want everything in place. The wedding happened 5 days later in a private ceremony at Dante's family estate in the countryside. I'd expected something cold and transactional, but what I got was surprisingly warm. Dante's 3 sisters descended on me the moment I arrived, Gabriella, Lucia, and Sophia, a whirlwind of dark hair and strong opinions and genuine affection that overwhelmed me in the best way. Finally, Dante does something interesting, Gabriella said, adjusting the simple white dress they'd somehow procured in my size overnight. We were beginning to think he'd marry for business instead of, she paused, studying my face, well, whatever this is. It is business, I said quietly. He's protecting me because someone's threatening me. That's all this is. The three sisters exchanged looks that suggested they didn't believe me for a second. Our brother doesn't marry for business, Lucia said firmly. Papa married for business. Our uncles married for business. Dante swore he'd never do that, said when he got married it would be because he actually wanted to, not because he had to. But this is different. Is it? Sophia, the youngest, smiled knowingly. He looks at you the way Papa looks at Mama when he thinks no one's watching. Like you're something precious he's afraid to break. Before I could process that, Dante's mother appeared. Isabella Romano was in her 60s, elegant and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that commanded respect without effort. Leave us, she told her daughters, who scattered immediately. I stood there in my borrowed white dress, 6 months pregnant and about to marry a man I'd known for less than 2 weeks, while his mother circled me like a shark assessing prey. You're younger than I expected, Isabella finally said. And pregnant with another man's child. Yes, ma'am. And you're marrying my son because he's offering protection. Yes, ma'am. Do you love him? The question caught me off guard. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. Isabella stopped in front of me, her gaze penetrating. I asked if you love him. I don't know. I care about him. I'm grateful to him. But love. I met her gaze directly. Love requires time, and we haven't had that. Something like approval flickered across Isabella's face. At least you're honest. That's more than I can say for most women who've tried to trap my son over the years. She reached out, adjusting the neckline of my dress with gentle hands. He's a good man, Alessia. Dangerous, yes. Powerful, absolutely. But good. He'll protect you and that baby with everything he has. The question is, will you protect him? From what? From himself. From the weight he carries. From becoming so hard that he forgets how to be soft. Isabella's expression grew distant. I watched it happen to his father. The business consumed everything gentle in him until all that was left was the boss. I don't want that for Dante. And I think you might be exactly what he needs to prevent it. The ceremony itself was brief. A judge who was clearly in Dante's pocket, Matteo and Dante's sisters as witnesses, and vows that felt both binding and surreal. I, Dante Antonio Romano, take you, Alessia Maria Castellano, to be my lawfully wedded wife. His voice was steady, certain, as he slid a ring onto my finger, a simple platinum band with 3 small diamonds that somehow felt perfect. I, Alessia Maria Castellano, take you, Dante Antonio Romano, to be my lawfully wedded husband. My voice shook, but I got through it. And when the judge pronounced us married and Dante kissed me, it was chaste and careful, nothing like the passionate declaration you'd expect at a real wedding. Because this wasn't real, I reminded myself. This was protection. Strategy. A business arrangement. Except when Dante pulled back and looked at me, something in his eyes suggested it was becoming more complicated than either of us had planned. The reception was small, just family and a few close associates. I met Dante's father, Antonio, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes and an aura of danger that made his son seem gentle by comparison. He studied me the way Isabella had, assessing and calculating, before finally nodding. You'll do, he said simply. Welcome to the family, Alessia. It was the closest thing to approval I was likely to get. As the evening wore on, I found myself exhausted but unable to rest. The baby was particularly active, responding to my stress with acrobatics that made sitting uncomfortable. I slipped outside onto the estate's terrace, needing air and space and a moment to process that I was now married to Dante Romano. You okay? His voice came from behind me. I turned to find him loosening his tie, jacket already discarded, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. Just needed air. And the baby's doing gymnastics. He moved to stand beside me at the railing, our shoulders nearly touching. Having regrets. Too late if I am. But I smiled to soften the words. No, not regrets exactly. Just, processing. This morning I was Alessia Castellano, single and pregnant and alone. Tonight I'm Alessia Romano, married to a man I barely know, part of a family I don't understand. You'll understand it. Given time. He paused. And you're not alone anymore. That was the point of all this. Is that the only point? I turned to face him. Your mother asked me if I loved you. Your sisters implied you don't do things like this without reason. Matteo acts like I'm some kind of complication. What am I to you, Dante? Really? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then he said, honestly. I'm still figuring that out. You were supposed to be a simple situation, woman in trouble, help extended, problem solved. But then you kept surprising me. Your strength, your honesty, the way you looked at me without fear when everyone else in that restaurant was terrified. He turned to meet my gaze. You're not what I expected, Alessia. And that makes you dangerous in ways I don't think you realize. Dangerous how? Because I'm starting to care what happens to you beyond just professional obligation. Because I think about you more than I should. Because when my sisters were helping you get ready today, I realized I was actually nervous about this wedding, which is insane since it's supposed to be just a business arrangement. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Dante. I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted. I know the terms of our agreement. I know you need time, space, the freedom to decide what this becomes. I'm just being honest about where I'm at. Before I could respond, Matteo appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. The warmth that had been building between Dante and me evaporated instantly. His expression shifted from vulnerable to controlled in a heartbeat. What kind of problem? Marco Vitelli just tried to breach the estate perimeter. My blood turned to ice. What? Security stopped him before he got close, but he was armed. Had a gun and what looks like detailed plans of the property. Matteo's expression was grim. He was coming for her, Dante. Tonight. During the wedding. Dante's hand found mine, squeezing once before he turned to his cousin. Where is he now? Secure location. Waiting for you to decide how to handle it. I'll handle it. Dante's voice was cold, final. He turned to me. Stay here with Gabriella. Don't leave the estate until I get back. Where are you going? To deal with Marco Vitelli. Permanently this time. Fear and something else, concern for Dante, not just myself, surged through me. Don't do something you'll regret. I won't regret protecting my wife. The way he said wife, like it meant something real, made my chest tight. Trust me, Alessia. This ends tonight. Then he was gone, Matteo following, leaving me alone on the terrace with the night air and the terrible certainty that whatever happened next would change everything. Gabriella found me 20 minutes later, still standing on the terrace, one hand on my stomach and the other gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Come inside, she said gently. It's cold, and you're shaking. He's going to kill Marco, isn't he? Your brother. He's going to. He's going to do what needs to be done to protect you and that baby. Gabriella wrapped an arm around my shoulders, guiding me inside to a sitting room where a fire crackled. This is who we are, Alessia. This is the world you married into. And I know it's frightening, but Dante is good at what he does. He'll handle this. By killing someone. Because of me. By eliminating a threat who tried to breach our family's home on the night of his wedding, armed and with clear intent to harm. Lucia had joined us, pressing a cup of tea into my hands. This isn't about you, not really. This is about Marco Vitelli making choices that have consequences. But it was about me. We all knew it. Marco had become obsessed with destroying me, blaming me for his downfall, and now Dante was going to kill him because of that obsession. The weight of it pressed down on my chest until I could barely breathe. I think I need to lie down, I managed. They helped me to a bedroom, not the one Dante and I were supposed to share, just a guest room where I could rest. As I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt the baby kick hard, as if reminding me why all of this mattered. I'd married Dante Romano to protect this child. To give my baby a chance at safety and stability. If the cost of that was Marco Vitelli's life, could I live with it? The answer came easier than I expected, yes. Because Marco had chosen violence. Had chosen to stalk me, to threaten me, to come here tonight with a gun. Whatever happened to him now was the result of his own choices. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, someone was gently shaking my shoulder. I opened my eyes to find Dante standing over me, his shirt untucked and his expression weary. It's done, he said quietly. I sat up slowly, my back protesting. Is he? He's alive. Barely. I had him beaten within an inch of his life and then dumped in a location where he'll be found by authorities with enough evidence to put him away for a long time. Assault, stalking, weapons charges. He won't see the outside of a prison cell for at least 10 years. Relief flooded through me. You didn't kill him. I thought about it. God knows I wanted to. Dante sank onto the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. But then I remembered what you said about not wanting that on your conscience. So I found a middle ground. He's broken, traumatized, and going to prison. But he's alive. I reached out without thinking, taking his hand. Thank you. For that. For sparing him even though he deserved worse. Dante's fingers tightened around mine. You're my wife now, Alessia. That means your wishes matter. If you didn't want him dead, then he lives. It's that simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, he agreed. It's really not. We sat there in the quiet, hands linked, while the reality of what we'd done, what we'd become to each other, settled around us like a cloak. We should go home, Dante said eventually. Back to the city. Start figuring out what this marriage actually looks like in practice. What does it look like? That's up to you. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet. We can be roommates who happen to be married. We can be partners building something real. We can be somewhere in between. But Alessia, he cupped my face with both hands, whatever we become, you're safe now. Truly safe. And that baby will grow up protected and loved. That much I can promise. I leaned into his touch, letting myself believe him. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's go home and figure this out together. The smile that crossed his face was genuine and warm and made him look years younger. Together. I liked the sound of that. 3 months later, I stood in the nursery Dante had insisted on creating in his penthouse, our penthouse now, putting finishing touches on the space while my very pregnant body protested every movement. 9 months. I'd made it to 9 months, and the baby could come any day now. The thought terrified and excited me in equal measure. You're supposed to be resting. Dante's voice came from the doorway. I turned to find him leaning against the frame, still in his work clothes but with his tie already loosened. This had become our routine, him coming home to find me doing something I shouldn't be, me arguing that I was fine, both of us pretending this was still just a business arrangement even as it became increasingly clear it was something more. I'm nesting. It's a thing pregnant women do. It's a thing pregnant women do when they're not 9 months along and supposed to be taking it easy. He moved into the room, gently taking the stuffed elephant I'd been arranging and setting it on the shelf himself. Come on. Dinner's here, and you need to eat. Bossy. Concerned husband. There's a difference. The word husband still sent a little thrill through me, even after 3 months of marriage. We'd settled into something comfortable, separate bedrooms but shared meals, professional boundaries but increasing personal conversations, mutual respect that was slowly becoming genuine affection. He hadn't pressured me for more. Hadn't expected me to play the dutiful wife beyond appearing at a few family functions. Had given me exactly the space and freedom he'd promised. And somehow, that restraint made me want to close the distance between us. Over dinner, Thai food from my current favorite place, because Dante had memorized my pregnancy cravings, we talked about the day. My doctor's appointment, everything looked good, his business meetings, complicated but handled, plans for when the baby arrived, terrifying but manageable. My mother wants to come stay for a week after the birth, Dante said carefully. To help with the baby, to make sure you're recovering well. But if that's too much. I'd like that actually. And I meant it. Isabella had become an unexpected ally over the past months, teaching me the intricacies of the Romano family, offering advice without judgment, treating me like an actual daughter-in-law instead of a temporary arrangement. She's been really kind to me. She likes you. Says you're good for me. Dante's expression grew thoughtful. She's not wrong. How am I good for you? You remind me that there's more to life than business and power. You make me want to be better, gentler. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You make me happy, Alessia. This marriage that was supposed to be practical and convenient has become the best part of my day. My heart did that complicated thing again, the flutter that happened whenever Dante said something unexpectedly vulnerable. It's become that for me too, I admitted quietly. Which is terrifying because it wasn't supposed to. This was supposed to stay simple. Nothing about us has been simple from the moment I walked into that restaurant. He reached across the table, taking my hand. And I'm glad. Simple is boring. This, whatever this is becoming, is anything but boring. The baby kicked hard against my ribs, as if agreeing. I should probably tell you something, I said, the words coming before I could second guess them. I've been thinking about what happens after the baby comes. About what I want our marriage to look like going forward. Dante's expression became carefully neutral, like he was bracing for bad news. Okay. I don't want separate bedrooms anymore. I don't want this careful distance we've been maintaining. I took a breath. I want to try making this real, Dante. Not just on paper, but actually real. A real marriage with real intimacy and real partnership. The transformation of his expression from guarded to hopeful to joyful happened in seconds. You're sure? Because I won't pressure you, Alessia. If you need more time. I've had 3 months. 3 months of watching you be patient and kind and respectful. 3 months of getting to know you, seeing how you treat your family, how you handle your business, how you care for me without expecting anything in return. I squeezed his hand. I'm not in love with you yet, but I think I could be. Given time. If you want that. If I want, he laughed, the sound full of relief and happiness. Alessia, I've been falling for you since you told me your best wasn't good enough and looked at me like you were daring me to disagree. I just didn't think you'd ever feel the same way. I'm 6 months pregnant with another man's baby and come with more baggage than an airport carousel. Why would you want? He was around the table before I could finish, kneeling beside my chair so we were eye level. Because you're strong and honest and brave. Because you made me laugh when I didn't think I could. Because when I come home and see you here, it feels right in a way nothing else in my life ever has. His hands framed my face. That baby you're carrying. I'm going to love them like they're mine. Because they're yours, and you're mine, and that makes them mine too. If you'll let me. The tears came before I could stop them, hormones and emotion and relief all tangled together. Yes. Yes, I'll let you. He kissed me then, properly kissed me for the first time since our wedding day. And it was nothing like that chaste kiss had been, this was heat and promise and the beginning of something neither of us had planned but both of us wanted. When we pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. Move into my room tonight, he said. You're 9 months pregnant, obviously we're not, but just to sleep beside you. To wake up with you. To start this new chapter properly. Okay, I whispered. Okay, yes. That night, I fell asleep in Dante Romano's arms for the first time, safe and cherished and surrounded by a love I hadn't known I was looking for. And 3 days later, at 2 in the morning, my water broke. Breathe, amore. Just breathe. Dante's voice was steady even though his hand was crushing mine. I am breathing, I gasped between contractions. This is me breathing while trying to push a human out of my body. You're doing amazing. So amazing. He pressed a kiss to my sweat-soaked forehead. Almost there. The doctor, a woman Dante had vetted extensively and who'd been on call for weeks, looked up from where she was monitoring everything. One more push, Alessia. You're almost done. I bore down with everything I had, Dante's hand in mine, his voice in my ear telling me I was strong and brave and he loved me. And then. A cry. High and indignant and the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. It's a girl, the doctor announced, lifting a tiny, perfect, furious little creature. Congratulations. They placed her on my chest, all vernix covered and screaming, and I fell instantly, irrevocably in love. Hi, baby girl, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Hi, sweet girl. We've been waiting for you. Dante was crying too, I realized. Silent tears tracking down his face as he looked at the baby, our baby, because that's what she was now, with an expression of such profound wonder that it made my chest ache. She's perfect, he breathed. Alessia, she's absolutely perfect. Do you want to cut the cord? The doctor asked him. He looked at me, uncertain. Can I? She's yours, I said softly. You're her father in every way that matters. So yes, you can. Watching Dante cut the cord, watching him take this first step into fatherhood, I knew with absolute certainty that marrying him had been the right choice. Not just for safety or security or practical reasons, but because this man loved me and would love our daughter with a fierceness that would never waver. Have you decided on a name? The nurse asked as they cleaned and weighed the baby. Dante and I looked at each other. We discussed names, debated them, made lists. But in this moment, there was only one that felt right. Sophia, I said. Sophia Isabella Romano. Dante's expression crumbled, and he pressed his face against my shoulder, his body shaking with emotion. Sophia for his youngest sister who'd become my friend. Isabella for his mother who'd welcomed me into the family. Romano, because this baby was his, biology be damned. Sophia, he repeated, his voice wrecked. That's perfect. They brought her back to me, now clean and swaddled, her dark eyes, my eyes, looking around with unfocused curiosity. Hi, Sophia, I whispered. Welcome to the family. You have no idea how loved you already are. Dante reached out tentatively, and I placed Sophia in his arms. Watching this powerful, dangerous man hold our tiny daughter with such gentle reverence made something settle deep in my chest. This was my family. Not by blood or traditional means, but by choice and circumstance and a love that had grown in unexpected soil. Thank you, Dante said quietly, his gaze never leaving Sophia's face. Thank you for letting me be her father. For giving me this. Thank you for choosing us. I reached out, placing my hand over his where it supported Sophia's head. For protecting us, for loving us, for becoming exactly what we needed. He looked up then, his dark eyes full of emotion. I love you, Alessia. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was afraid it was too soon, that you weren't ready. But I love you. Completely. Forever. I love you too, I said, and realized it was true. Somewhere between the protection and the patience and the partnership, I'd fallen in love with my husband. This wasn't how I thought my life would go, but I can't imagine it any other way now. No regrets. Not a single one. Sophia chose that moment to yawn, her tiny face scrunching up in the most adorable way possible, and both Dante and I laughed through our tears. This was everything. This moment, this family, this love that had been forged in crisis and tempered by choice. The man who'd claimed I was his wife to protect me had become the husband I wanted in every way. The marriage of convenience had transformed into something real and deep and permanent. And the baby I'd been terrified to raise alone now had a father who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. 6 months after Sophia was born, we stood in the same restaurant where everything had begun. Marcello's had been renovated, with Sophia Marcello, who'd become a friend, running it with new policies and a new manager who actually valued the staff. This is where it started, I said to Dante, looking around the dining room. Where you first saw me. Where I first saved you, he corrected, Sophia sleeping against his chest in a baby carrier. And where you first looked at me like I was more than just the boss. I was terrified of you. You were furious with me. There's a difference. He smiled, pressing a kiss to Sophia's head. You thought I was overstepping, making decisions for you. You were overstepping. I was protecting what was mine. His arm came around my waist, pulling me close. I just didn't know it yet. We'd come here for lunch, a deliberate choice to reclaim this space, to transform it from the site of trauma into something positive. Sophia Marcello had insisted on preparing something special, and as we were led to a private table, I saw the effort she'd put in. Flowers on the table, white roses, my favorite. Sparkling cider since I was nursing. And a small card that read, "To new beginnings." This is perfect, I told her when she appeared with our meals. You deserve perfect. Sophia smiled. After everything you went through here, the least I could do is make new memories. As we ate, Sophia sleeping peacefully and Dante telling stories about his sister's latest dramatics, I marveled at how different my life looked now versus a year ago. A year ago, I'd been alone and terrified, pregnant and desperate, with no prospects and no hope. Now I had a husband who loved me, a daughter who was healthy and happy, a family who'd welcomed us both without reservation, and a future that stretched out full of promise instead of fear. What are you thinking? Dante asked, noticing my distant expression. That I'm grateful. For all of it, the good and the bad, because the bad led me here. To me. To us. To this family we've built. I reached across the table, taking his hand. I wouldn't change any of it, Dante. Not one single moment. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now, I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story. His smile was everything, warm and genuine and full of a love that had transformed both our lives. Neither would I, he said. Neither would I. And as we sat there in the restaurant where our story had begun, with our daughter sleeping between us and our future spreading out like a promise, I knew with absolute certainty that this was where I was meant to be. Not because of fate or destiny or some grand design, but because we'd chosen each other. Again and again, in big ways and small, we'd chosen to build this life together. And that choice made all the difference.